We have really seen a change in the way institutional investors approach investing in real estate. So achieving a financial return commensurate to risk has always been the cornerstone of real estate investment. But what we've seen change over the past few years has been a desire to really have what I call a so what, or an impact behind investing. I think that's for a few reasons. First off, I think people are aware that when they're in control of pools of capital, they have a tremendous responsibility, and that the ability to do the right thing behind what they're investing, I think, resonates with people. I think the underlying investors in pension funds are more and more interested in what their money is achieving and what it's doing. So being able to point to the good or the positive that investments have made is really important. I think thirdly, investors have realized that assets that fall in this bucket, or this category, are going to be worth more in the medium to long term. So that's led to, particularly in the last few years, often the first question that we're asked when we speak with investors is, what's the so what behind this? What impact and what additionality are you achieving by making this investment in real estate? So things like, for instance, delivering accommodation in the most needed sectors, so for elderly people, or much needed affordable housing, or freeing up the housing ladder, saving the NHS money. These are all side effects of investing in certain types of real estate that really resonate with investors. I think we're seeing that push from both individual investors and larger investors. I think the other interesting thing is these large funds are, generally speaking, just huge conglomerates of individual people. So take the largest pension funds. Those are really just thousands or hundreds of thousands of people directing their capital to work together. And I think people more and more want to know what their individual investment is achieving. And I think that's been led by developments in the retail space and trying to connect investors more closely with the outcomes of their investment. I don't think this is niche. I think it's pretty much mainstream. And I think, one example is the B Corp movement. Octopus became a B Corp a few years ago, something we're really proud of. It took us a few years to get there. But there are lots of companies like Octopus that are directing their activities towards areas that have a big impact, that achieve a greater goal than just financial return. I think we're definitely seeing the emergence of a green premium, and I think it's going to widen. So we first started seeing this in the office space, where a 10% premium opened up, and in some cases, super premium properties, that price difference is even bigger than 10%. We're a big investor in care homes, and we see today identical care homes, one being delivered, say, with gas, the other being delivered all electric, air source heat pumps, roof mount solar. The latter is just going to be worth more. And it's worth more for a few reasons. Firstly, for a long-term investor, holding that asset is more interesting, more appealing. But there's a secondary point, which is if you own a building or run a building with green electricity, with local generation, your energy bill's lower, which means your capacity to pay your rent has improved. So actually, financially, it makes the building more sustainable, makes the lease more sustainable, and that flows through to valuation as well. So net zero is a really, really important thing. And so companies making net zero pledges, or funds making pledges to achieve net zero by a certain date, super important. So Octopus, we've pledged to be net zero by 2030. Various funds have their own pledges. So for instance, our care homes fund, all new care homes will be net zero by 2030. So these are important, but they're a sort of medium to long-term goal. And I think people sometimes, at an individual level, struggle to connect with what that actually means. So what we're finding is really powerful for people is zero bills. So the capacity to have a property, residential property, that over a 12-month period doesn't cost you anything for electricity. So Octopus Energy, our sister company, launched a zero bills product recently, and through innovative technology over a 12-month period is able to guarantee that there'll be no energy bill for several years, 5+ years. So that has an immediate impact on people's daily life. It's not an alternative to net zero. I think they go hand in hand. But in terms of connecting people to a net zero movement, zero bills is really powerful. Initially, it's a domestic thing. So you're using roof mount solar panels, an air source heat pump, battery, a smart meter, and some very clever software to connect it all together. And that works on a residential property. We're seeing it also, not so much zero bills, but certainly retrofitting solar, air source heat pumps and batteries to commercial properties. For instance, care homes is a good example. You have quite a large roof space, so you can actually retrofit solar panels. You can't get the electricity bill down to zero, but you can certainly make a big impact, 30+% of energy bills. Yeah, so we recently moved into the affordable housing sector for a couple of reasons, really. Firstly, there's still a huge shortage of housing for people looking to move into affordable housing. So more than 1 million people in the UK on a waiting list to move into affordable housing. We're just simply not building enough houses. So that aligns really well with our mission as a B Corp to deliver that housing, to help deliver that housing. I think the second reason is the cost of living crisis. So it's costing more and more just to heat a property and to live in a property. So we're looking to launch affordable housing, which helps to reduce that waiting list, but also to deliver property with as close to zero energy bills as possible. And that's because the people living in affordable housing are the least able to afford their energy bills. So if you can do both, if you can deliver new housing, but make it as cheap to run as possible, that has a real impact on people's lives. We wanted to enter the affordable housing sector, but do it in a slightly different way. So the focus on energy efficiency and as close to zero bills as possible, that's a big focus on it for us, particularly given our association with Octopus Energy and our capacity to help local authorities and housing associations achieve that. I go back to my other point, there just isn't enough being built, and we want to partner for the long term. So we're not entering the space for the short term, for sort of yield compression and aggregating a portfolio and selling it. We want to be what I call a forever landlord, the way we approach care homes, which is we build a portfolio that we're proud of that will go on for decades and decades and decades. So that's why we're approaching it with our partnerships and with our deal structures for the long term. Anyone who makes firm predictions in the current environment is probably going to be proven wrong. But my view is I'm probably cautiously optimistic just by nature. I think the first 6 months of 2023 are going to be a period of normalization. I hope the Ukraine war is ended as soon as possible. That will help things normalize further. I think there's still some property price correction to happen in certain sectors this year. But I think by the end of this year, I think things will have shaken through. That's my hope.